Hi, this is Rai Sinha and this is my art studio. Today I am going to show you how to stretch a watercolor paper. Any watercolor papers needs to be stretched prior to putting layers of water over it. That is because as soon as you put water over a paper, it tends to buckle up. When you stretch a watercolor paper beforehand, it is bound on all four sides, which prevents it from buckling when you put layers of your watercolor paint. So let's see how to stretch a watercolor paper. Here I have a white gummed tape. Normally we get in the shops the brown gum tapes. My gum tape is exactly the same as a brown gummed tape that you will normally get in shops. It is just white in color. So I will measure the length that covers the width of my paper and a little bit more, and cut 4 strips like this. Okay, so I cut 4 strips of that gummed brown tape and keep it aside for later use. Now I have a pot of water over here and I have a wide brush. You can use sponges instead of brush. I dip my brush in the water and wet my paper generously. This can be done like this, or otherwise you can just dip your paper in a tub full of water in your bathtub, or you can just close the drain pipe of your sink and fill up your sink with some water and just dip your paper in for 15-20 minutes. Otherwise you can just wet one side of the paper with your wide brush or a sponge and leave it for a few minutes. I will leave it for a few minutes and then go over it again with my wet brush so that the paper is completely wet on one side and the water gets soaked inside the paper. So when you generously wet the paper from corner to corner and in the center and everywhere, after some time the paper soaks up the water and it becomes like a wet cloth. So that is when I will turn it around and put the wet side on the board and the dry side facing me. Now I'll take the strips of gummed brown tape and dip it in the water to activate the gum on one side of it. You will feel it sticky when you dip it in water. So now you press it on your paper, half on the paper and half on the board. Then you take a cloth or a sponge and gently dab the water, excess water that is left on your drawing watercolor paper. So that's how you stretch your watercolor paper and leave it for drying completely before you start painting. After it completely dries, you will get a paper like this. Look, it is completely stretched and has dried flat. So it will not buckle up anymore when you put your watercolor paint over it. It may happen so that your gummed brown tape may lift up after it dries. If it happens so, then you have to take it off from the board like this and again stretch it. Put water on the other side in the way that I showed you here, and again stretch it with fresh strips of your brown tape. You have to just tear this one off from here, from the edge of the paper, and use fresh brown tapes to stretch it again. I leave this one for drying. While drying, it may develop some bubbles here and there. Not to worry, they will go flat once it is dry. Once your paper is completely dry and it has been successfully stretched, which means the brown tape hasn't lifted up and it has dried straight flat on the board, then you need to stick the masking tape, which will go half on the uncovered paper and half on your brown tape. So now your paper is completely ready for watercolor painting.